All right, y'all, now it's time to dive back. How far back in time to Image in the what? Image in the 90s. And tonight we're talking about Wildstar. Wildstar from Al Gordon and Jerry Ordway. Now, first and foremost, I am a huge fan of Jerry Ordway. I like his art. It's classic. It's superhero. He's got a great run on Power of Shazam. He's got a great run on Adventures of Superman. I have met Jerry Ordway. I got him to sign a Power of Shazam #1, and in Adventures of Superman, I think it was a 400 or something. So I am a fan of this cat's artwork, and I vaguely remembered Wildstar from when it first came out. This is 1993, so this was in phase 2 of Image Comics, and this is technically called Wildstar Sky Zero. It is, in fact, a 4-issue series that was meant to latch on to that Image success, propel it through with the introduction of a new superhero, Wildstar, and also it tries to deliver a really interesting time travel, timey-wimey twist-ending story. Let's get into it. First of all, I love the artwork. I am a huge fan of Jerry Ordway, but this does feel like 2 squares trying to fit into the Image eye peg, if that makes sense. Sometimes it feels like they're trying to be a little bit too edgy. Sometimes they're not edgy enough, but let's talk about it. So we start, it's in the future. Wildstar's running around looking for this time machine. He's being hunted down by these people. They got these symbiotes on them. We'll get more into that, but he's being hunted down by these dudes. He's trying to find this time machine, and immediately I am involved in this story because this moment right here where Wildstar rips this dude's face off is pretty dope. He's actually ripping off the symbiote that's attached to it so that he can kill it and destroy it, but apparently he's been trying to find this, like, some kind of piece of technology for decades, a decade and a half, right? There's a character right there. I can't remember what she's called. Jumpstart, I think. She's got the hots for Wildstar. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But this group, they're after him for some reason. He winds up getting to this device. We're introduced to this, like, nerdy kid. Why? We'll find out later on. But they're fighting him. They're in the future. And he winds up getting this piece of technology, and he goes back in time. And the artwork, like I said, I like Jerry Ordway, but this does not fit that Image vein, nor does Al Gordon's scripting feel very good at all. In fact, the script is kind of weak, but the art does still shine for what it is and for what it's trying to do. And we're introduced to this, like, godlike figure very quick, and she explains that Wildstar's in a time loop. He hits the button, then we flash back to now, presumably, I guess, 1993, and that's where we are, right here. And so we're introduced to this kid, Mickey, and his father, and they're connected to this scientific lab that's studying this piece of technology that they believe may be a time device, and then an earthquake happens, and it turns out that the whole place gets wiped out, right? So they go, and this is the time travel device. So Wildstar has teleported or time traveled this entire space back 30 years back in the past, and there he is, and he winds up meeting this Mickey kid, and he's like, oh my god, it's actually you. By the way, this dude's name is Michael, and this kid's name is Mickey, and it's supposed to not be obvious because it's the big twist revealed at the end of issue 3, but they're the same fucking person. So this is that dude in the past. He's this kid. He's got this starfish looking thing on his chest that gives him power, but it's also this symbiotic thing. He's back in past. Why? He's trying to stop this beacon that's going to bring some alien race back into the past earlier than they should, which causes this giant war. It's a total thematic ripoff of Terminator 2, Judgment Day. And they even make references to that in these issues. Like, some called it Judgment Day, but we called it Sky Zero. And then somebody's like, oh, you like James Cameron much? Like, they even know exactly what they're doing. Then we get into issue number 2. Turns out that when he threw himself back in time, it wasn't just him, but also those dudes that were after him. A whole crew of people trying to stop him from doing what he's trying to do. Basically because he's trying to undo his timeline, even though apparently he's been stuck in a time loop trying to do it. They're trying to stop him from erasing their timeline because they're like the big bullies of that timeline. So then we go into issue number 2, and it kicks off in like a dream sequence. And this is probably the best sequence in the entire book. It's big, it's explosive, it's the most like a Image comic from this era, and it's really a forecast of the Brian Hitch, Warren Ellis widescreen dynamic and effect that was going to come into prominence in the late 90s with books like The Authority, right? So this is a really great dream sequence where he dreams that he's fighting this villain. It's a silent segment, and he gets killed. But then he wakes up, and he's in the car with this kid, Mickey, the younger version of himself, but we're not supposed to know about that yet. He's explaining all this kind of stuff. What's going on? He's back. He's got to stop this beacon. He's got to stop this alien attack. They're working with different corporations in different countries, and it's the U.S. versus another thing. And they always say that the aliens are there because they find a special something on Earth, but they never fucking reveal whatever the hell it is. He's damaged. He's been taken to the spot. He's going to meditate and heal. The kid leaves, picks up this random nerd. He's going to be integral to the story later on. For what reasons, who knows? So the villains who traveled back with Wildstar are talking to Mickey's dad, to Wildstar's dad, and now they got the general involved, and they want to be taken to where this beacon is because they're the ones that have the beacon. They want to make sure the beacon survives so that their future, their lives survive. Wildstar is trying to stop that beacon, to stop this horrible future. The general and Wildstar / Mickey's dad has their own issues with each other, and the chick, Jumpstart, has a crush on Wildstar, so she's going to wind up leaving the group and helping Wildstar. I'm just getting ahead of myself because there's really not too much to this, right? So it is a little bit like Terminator. All these different pieces kind of get thrown together, and Wildstar shows back up. He's trying to fight these dudes off. He's trying to stop the beacon. They're convincing the military that they need to allow the beacon to go. Plus, the military is working with this alien race, and they have nefarious experiments underneath. Like I said, it's pretty well done in those first few issues artistically, but it doesn't give you some of the wham and the pow of what we know from Image Comics, right? And Jerry Ordway did this in between his DC gigs. So it didn't come out month to month, but it did all come out 4 issues within the same year. This leads us to Wildstar number 3. So at the end here, Wildstar, who is Michael, picks up his younger self, Mickey, and takes off with him to go and find this beacon, right? And then in the 3rd issue, we have Savage Dragon showing up, right? So there they are, and they're flying. They're trying to get to this place, trying to figure out what's going on. We get a little bit more explanation, lots of verbosity on these pages, lots of overly exposition to exposition, right? But then, of course, we got them being chased down. We got the kid's dad involved and the general there again. And then, of course, Savage Dragon in between, like probably issue 5 and 6 or something. I don't fucking know. I haven't read all the ongoing stuff yet. But Savage Dragon is on his way to the airport from a previous mission. And he's like, I'm so tired of superheroes. I wouldn't even fight one if one landed in my lap. Wildstar falls in his lap, leads to a big fight. We'll get back to that later. They're showing them the special base that they have. That's where the beacon is located. That's where everybody is trying to get. So then we get this, of course, obligatory fight between Savage Dragon and Wildstar. And Wildstar, I believe, has been purchased from Al Gordon and Jerry Ordway, who apparently had some creative differences in the direction of this series, which led to Jerry Ordway leaving the project. After this initial 4-issue series, it returned for an ongoing, but it got canceled after 3 issues. And that was done by Al Gordon as well, but a different penciler coming in. So we get the big fight between him and Savage Dragon, and now the military's there. Savage Dragon's not trying to work for them. And I want to point out the coloring right now. Rather drab in these issues. When I was putting these thumbnails together, I was able to really look at them at a smaller scale and noticing how brown all the colors become. Like there's a little bit of contrast here with the green and the orange, but it's not really powerful or dynamic enough. It all kind of muddies itself together. But like I said, Jerry Ordway is a very capable crafty hand at comic books, but it just doesn't quite fit, right? It's trying to be too edgy, but it's not delivering an impact, and it's involving Savage Dragon, but not quite enough. He's just kind of there to fight, and it's like you have all this complexity going on, and you only have 4 issues to tell it, and you're throwing in a gratuitous cameo. Why? Who knows? But I do believe Eric Larson has bought the rights to Wildstar and still uses Wildstar in random issues of Savage Dragon. So young Mikey, young Wildstar, is dying. He gets injured. He's about to die. So old Mickey, who was Michael, who was Wildstar, decides he needs to peel off his symbiote, give it to Mickey so that Mickey can then get the symbiote earlier and become Wildstar, and then he dies. So he sacrifices himself to save. Now, this is the moment where we're supposed to realize for the first time that this dude's the same person as this kid, though it's pretty fucking obvious all the way through. He gets the power, chicks all into him. He disappears in the dust. He's like, what am I supposed to do? This is crazy. He's Wildstar. He's got the powers now. Then we get into the final issue. This is where it gets really fucking wonky. If it didn't already sound wonky, it gets wonkier. So now they're in this secret base. He's trying to stop the beacon. The people from the future are trying to keep the beacon. Now the chick jumpstarts working with him. And it's a decent enough kind of setup for the ending. They're all having this big climatic fight and battle. They have the little bit there with Savage Dragons there. And he's like, you know what? The military's like, you're not allowed to know anything about this. He's like, you know what? I don't want to fucking know anything about this. I'm out of here. So he just leaves. Meanwhile, General has actually been doing these crazy experiments in this secret base. He's got this crazy monster in the tank. It's the monster that Wildstar dreamed of killing him. So that was the time loop, but he has broken the time loop by giving the symbiote to his younger self. So his younger self is learning how to use his powers with the aid of Jumpstart, is fighting these dudes from the future, trying to stop him from erasing their future, thus their existence. And then he crashes into the tank. He has to fight this monster. Meanwhile, this dude just talks to a computer and hacks into this whole thing and does something weird and mysterious. We'll get back to that in just a second. More big fighting, more big slam bang type stuff. The future has been changed. They're trying to stop. They're trying to win the day. And ultimately, they kind of do. Jumpstart kind of, jumps on his side. They take out these dudes. And then it gets to this fucking random ending where Wildstar, young Wildstar, is about to fucking die and be killed by this dude. And then that mysterious goddess type figure shows back up at the end and says, oh, it's me the whole time. I started the time loop because I sent you back. But before that, it wasn't a beacon that brought these aliens down to Earth. It was me causing a ripple in time and space when I went back into time because she just loves the fashion and the music of the fucking 90s. So her going back to the 90s, and she's in between man and God. She keeps fucking repeating as if that's a goddamn explanation. So it's all fucking over the place. She shows up. She's like, oh, I love the 90s so much that I like to come here, but it caused a ripple in space and time. So I sent Wildstar back to try to fix it, but it caused this time vortex, this time fucking loop, and it's complicating things more. And now my godlike being parents know that me, so now they've made me immortal. And she's trying to convince Wildstar to like join her to create this new timeline to prevent this terrible ending, this terrible future for humanity that she has actually fucking caused. And the whole beacon thing was just a bullshit fucking lie. And Wildstar just gets fucking pissed. And it's basically like, fuck you, I'm grabbing my dad and I'm out. And then it loops back 25 years later. He's in the same fucking situation. So that's Wildstar. Doesn't seem like I liked it, right? I didn't really. It was interesting enough. So here's my copies. First issue's got this really nice embossed foil kind of cover. And yeah, the artwork's fine. The first issue's got a little bit more newsprinty. Then it gets glossy for the next ones. But Jerry Ordway's art is fine, but it does not fit for an image book. They try to go big and explosive, dynamic and edgy, but it doesn't really quite deliver on it. The writing is quite bad. It is very derivative, of course, of Terminator 2, and it acknowledges that. Now we're in this glossy paper. This is the best segment right here. You got this dude's guts like fucking hanging out, but it just doesn't feel like it. Stephen Platt, this shit is not. It's overly verbose in certain moments. But I do appreciate this character's, I guess, legacy in Savage Dragon. And so knowing that, I like that Savage Dragon's in there. That's a pretty cool fight. That's a pretty cool moment, but it's kind of worthless. And the big twist that happens in these pages just does not work. And I really love the Eric Larson Savage Dragon making fun of the whole, like, Frank Miller writes Spawn number whatever, right? I love that. Eric Larson writes Savage Dragon number 5. Anyway, and then the final issue is just fucking drivel. It really is. Like, it's gearing up to, like, a pretty decent action-packed. I read this twice. First time I read this, I did not like it whatsoever. But the second time, a lot of it ironed out for me, but not this 4th issue. Because it's building up to some really cool stuff, and then all of a sudden, this character shows back up at the end, and is like, oh, there is no beacon. I'm the one that caused this whole catastrophe. I made it worse by sending you back into time over and fucking over and over. And it over-explains it just to have the dude fucking leave, which is to set up a mini-series or an ongoing series that only goes 3 issues and gets canceled. So overall, I didn't really like it. It has potential, but it doesn't live up to that potential. It's not written very well. It's jumbled all over the fucking place. But I do like Jerry Ordway. So it's a cool kind of spot in his career. And if I ever am at a con where Jerry Ordway's at again, I will proudly have him sign my Wildstar number 1. So I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I checked it out. I'll give it 2.5 you digs out of 5. Mostly for the artwork and its potential, but it is all fucking over the place. Jelani says 3 you digs. Ah, man, Miami's kicking the shit out of us. That's okay. That's okay. I can only see Ordway draw Superman, says Jelani. Yeah, and that's kind of the problem. It's a really odd choice. We're talking about Image Wave 2. We're talking about Wildstar. We're talking about like shit like Pitt and the Max. And it's like, this is like an SAT question. Which one of these does not fit? Spilio says, what's funny is I have these issues. Cards fan says, Wildstar, used to love that 2 series, right? Great stuff. Yeah, I thought it was all right. I just remember him ripping off that star off his chest and sticking it on someone else. Yeah, and there's some moments where it does look gnarly and cool. But yeah, I'm going to go 2.5. Doesn't really work so much for me. But it was nice to go back and check that out for the first time. And glad I have it in my collection. And like I said, if I ever meet Jerry Ordway again, I will proudly have him sign my copy of Wildstar number 1. And that's been Image in the 90s.